Indiana County 911. My brother's gone. Can you be a little more specific, sir? He took my brother. Who took him? I don't know who took him. I don't know what. Sir, take a breath. Explain to me what happened.
And I looked out and there was this big red blinking UFO.
I can just say this. Something's going on in the woods. Something's going on.
They're not dogs, they're not coyotes. What could it be, right?
I had an encounter with a skunk ape, and it completely altered the course of my life.
I found a skull. I think you guys are gonna want to come film this.
Put him out.
I just see it.
Sightings of a UFO hovering over a barn.
Millie woke up from a dream, and when I went into the bedroom, she said there's a monster on the wall.
They saw that the creature had run through a barbed wire fence. They were able to obtain hairs. They sent the hairs to their lab, and it came back as an unknown creature.
Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin.
What is up, Bizarrites, and welcome back to the most bizarre show on the internet. I am the one that like 4 people call Shane Squatch.
What the hell is even that?
And alongside me, I have the big bad Boo Daddy himself, Sir Orin Felix.
Daddy, chill.
Welcome to the show.
Sir? Have I been knighted now?
Yeah, you are officially knighted as the big bad Boo Daddy. Now you have an extra hierarchy of royalty that have been added on. You have proven yourself to the queen that you need to be in arms by her side, hence as the big bad Boo Daddy. So now you are Sir Orin Felix, the big bad Boo Daddy himself.
His Highness.
We're just going to keep adding an extra little part to it each show. So eventually we'll get to a point where it's just ridiculous to say, and we'll have to spend like 10 minutes of the show just saying your title in about a year and a half. It'll be fun.
Well, that's all we need is more front of the house stuff. So that'll be great.
Speaking of front of the house stuff, though, this is a perfect leeway in. So I know that you have some updates as far as next week's episode before we give them the rest of the updates. So I'll let you give them that one first.
Yes. So next week, I've got like a work thing I have to do on our normal recording night. So we won't have an episode dropping next week, but we'll be back the next following week after that with Bizarre Inquiries. That's going to be June 5th. That's a Thursday at 7:15 on the Open Minds Media YouTube channel. So you guys make sure that you submit questions or articles or anything like that that you want us to inquire about. And also be sure to join us in the chat. We've had some good turnout the past couple episodes, and it's really fun to talk to you guys in the chat as we're going through the material. So you guys be sure to join us on that.
And if you guys are not currently on the live show listening to this live and you guys are waiting until the following week to hear the live episodes, all you guys got to do to pop into the show, throw some questions, throw some ideas, is go and subscribe to the Open Minds Media YouTube channel. Hit that little bell notification in the top corner, and you guys will be able to catch Bizarre Encounters. I was about to say Bizarre Inquiries. Bizarre Encounters. Encounters. Bizarre Encounters. It's a mix of the two shows.
Well equipped as to Bizarre Encounters.
Every Thursday between 7 and 7:45. Somewhere in that area. Well, 7:15 and 7:45. You guys can catch Bizarre Encounters. Combination of the two. You don't know what you're going to get. It might be Bizarre Inquiries. It might be Bizarre Encounters. I guess you'll just have to figure out when you pop in. But
brand new show just dropped.
Brand new show.
Speaking of things that are brand new and have just dropped,
I do have 2 brand new shirt designs that are over there on the Open Minds Media merch store. So if you guys want to check those out, the first one I have is this awesome, chill, laid-back design where you got, Bigfoot sitting over there with some allotments. You got the alien sitting over there with his third eye open, puffing on a joint, having a good time, chilling around a bonfire. No text needed. I didn't think it was needed on this design, but I definitely enjoy it. I actually ended up scooping one for myself, so if you guys want to go and check it out on the social media pages, I'll probably post a picture of it so you guys can see how it looks in the next week or so. And then on the other flip side, for the more conspiratorial-minded folks out there, I have another new design that says Break the Mind Control with these really cool marionette hands with this hypnotic spiral in the background. So a little bit of something for everybody. And just to give you guys a special insight on something that I am working on, and this is particularly just for the Bizarre Encounters listeners, I am going to be working on a 9 Rouge design because I have not seen anybody do that. And as a Detroit local, I kind of feel like after doing the episode, I should probably drop a 9 Rouge design. So for all my Detroit locals, make sure you guys keep an eye out because hopefully in the next couple weeks, I will have a brand new design for that. And it may be one of the very first in the cryptid community that has been made for the 9 Rouge. So something special to be able to scoop for you guys.
Are you going to send one to Kid Rock?
I should, but he might come back with me really aggressively, and I don't know if I like that. Fuck all you hoes, Detroit, right?
I don't know. He seems pretty even keeled to me.
It depends on what you're going on about, man. I mean, if you wear a Biden shirt in front of Trump, you might get, or in front of Kid Rock, you might get knocked out. So you better hope that you're on the right side.
Well, and I'm drinking a Bud Light, so we're both screwed.
Oh, yeah, we're both fucked.
All right. So, Shane, if anybody out there wants to be a guest on the show or get up with us for any reason whatsoever, tell them how they can do that.
You guys can email us at bizarreencounters@outlook.com. And I have seen that a lot of you guys have taken up on that opportunity, so I greatly appreciate it. And on the flip side, you guys can also call or text the Open Minds Media hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551. And if you guys didn't catch that, it is available down in the show notes, so you guys can find it quick and easy.
And all this shit we've mentioned is in the link tree in the show description.
And diving into today's episode, for anybody that somehow didn't see the cover art when you guys clicked to listen to this episode, we're going to be diving into something that Orin put together today. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Orin this week to dive into what he's been researching for you guys.
Yeah, so this is going to be another one that's a little bit different. It's not going to be a cryptid. It's not going to be aliens. It's not going to be even conspiracies. It's going to be something still bizarre, though. We're going to talk about D.B. Cooper. And Shane, is there anything in particular that you know about D.B. Cooper before we start?
Yeah, Cooper parachuted out of a plane up north with a bunch of stolen cats.
That's all I got, right? Without a paddle. That's the only reference point that anybody has to this. But on the flip side, people do call him the human cryptid, so he may kind of fall into that category a little bit, depending on who you ask.
Well, there you go. It's definitely bizarre. So unless you got anything else or any other fun sound bites, I'm going to jump in.
Well, I'm going to hold him on retainer for the perfect moment.
Jump in. No pun intended.
No pun intended. There you go.
Jump out. Okay.
Jump out.
All right. So getting started. At approximately 2 p.m. on November 24th of 1971, and that was the day before Thanksgiving, a mysterious man arrived at the Portland International Airport in Portland, Oregon. The man was described as being approximately 6 feet tall, well-built, and in his mid-40s. Remember that. Okay. He had light skin, dark hair, and brown eyes. And he wore a black business suit with a white shirt, a black tie, brown slip-on loafers, and a black overcoat. And with him, he carried a black briefcase and a brown paper bag. So when the man got to the airport, he paid $20 in cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle. So back in the 70s, you could buy an airline ticket for $20. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, they didn't even really check India. You could bring whatever the hell you wanted on a plane.
We're getting there. But pump your brakes a little bit there, Shane. So anyway, he paid $20 for his airline ticket, and it was aboard Northwest Orient Airlines flight number 305. And when he purchased the ticket, he identified himself as Dan Cooper.
No, I ain't D.B. Cooper.
Okay.
He had to specify that he is not D.B. Cooper, just so everybody knows.
So this particular flight was aboard a Boeing 727 model airplane. And it had a total of 36 passengers, including Cooper, and it had 6 crew members. And the crew consisted of Captain William Scott, First Officer Bill Radazak, Flight Engineer Harold Anderson, and 3 flight attendants named Alice Hancock, Florence Schaffner, and Tina Mucklow. And allegedly, Cooper was the second to the last passenger to board the plane, and he sat on the back row of the plane in seat number 18E. So at approximately 3 p.m., Flight 305 departed for Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. And shortly after takeoff, Cooper lit a cigarette and ordered a bourbon and 7-Up. Hell of a drink order. I respect him for that.
Just right to the point.
Yeah.
just a little bit of chaser. Just get it done.
So Florence Schaffner, the flight attendant, brought him his drink, and he handed her this note. So Schaffner, she just kind of assumed that, this was like some lonely businessman who was trying to hit on her. So she initially disregarded this note and just slipped it into her pocket. But a few minutes later, Cooper insisted that she read the note. And when she did, she was kind of shocked and terrified because the note was neatly written in all caps letters. And it read, quote, "Miss, I have a bomb in my briefcase and I want you to sit by me." So Schaffner sat down next to Cooper as she was instructed. And at that point, he opened up his briefcase and he showed her what appeared to be like 8 sticks of dynamite that were kind of wrapped together and wired to a cylindrical battery. And at this point, Schaffner allegedly asked Cooper if he was joking. And he replied, quote, "No, miss, this is for real."
That you can dare I say that they had an explosive connection.
Not an explosive finale like
Yet.
with our boy Jack Parsons.
Yet. Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break.
But in the meantime, don't forget to follow Bizarre Encounters on Instagram and Facebook, and don't forget to check out Open Minds Media on YouTube and TikTok. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to leave a comment or spark up a conversation. We love getting to know you guys.
And now back to the show.
All right, so as Flight 305 made its way to Seattle, Cooper instructed Schaffner to make a list of his demands. And the list included $200,000 in, quote, negotiable American currency. And remember that phrasing. Okay. I'm not quite sure what that was, so I'm just going to move on.
Give me your fucking money!
Just play it again for you.
$200,000 in negotiable American currency. And again, remember that phrasing. It's going to come back up. And this $200,000 would be roughly $1.6 million in today's money. So, I mean, that's a pretty substantial chunk of money.
Money.
And okay. And Cooper wanted this money to be delivered to him in a knapsack. And he wanted 2 back parachutes and 2 front parachutes. And he also wanted the plane to be refueled when they landed in Seattle. And he also said that he wanted all the passengers to remain seated while all this happened. And he wanted Tina Mucklow to go and retrieve the parachutes and the cash and bring them on the plane for him. And it's been suggested that by demanding 2 sets of parachutes, Cooper, quote, implied he planned to take a hostage with him, thereby discouraging authorities from supplying non-functional equipment. So after she kind of wrote down this list of demands, she took the list to Captain Scott in the cockpit, and he instructed her to remain in the cockpit for the rest of the flight. And at this point, Tina Mucklow sat down next to Cooper to act as a liaison between him and the flight crew. And I saw like kind of different accounts of this part of the story, but one of them said that at this point he put on like dark wraparound sunglasses, supposedly to like conceal his identity from this second flight attendant who was sitting by him.
You know what else he said at this point?
No,
money.
No, I am not DB Cooper. He had to specify that the whole time this was happening. This is a direct quote from him.
No, I ain't DB Cooper.
Yeah, he just had to make sure that everybody knew that he was not DB Cooper.
Okay. So it's kind of funny, but throughout this like whole ordeal, like all the other passengers on the plane were like not aware that the plane was like actively being hijacked. So it's pretty crazy that like the flight crew and everybody were able to keep this under wraps and, you know, keep this from really, you know, devolving into a hostile situation. But anyway, as they flew, Captain Scott contacted air traffic control at the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, and he kind of told them about the situation that was going on. And according to the flight transcript, he allegedly stated, quote, passenger is advising he is hijacking. En route to SEA, the stewardess has been handed a note requesting $200,000 and a knapsack by 5 p.m. this afternoon. Money. He wants 2 backpack parachutes and 2 front parachutes. He wants the money in negotiable American currency. There's that phrasing again.
Negotiable? What does that mean exactly?
We're going to get there. And this is kind of important too. The next line of the flight log says, quote, denomination of the bills is not important. So remember that too when we get a little further along. Quote, he has a bomb in his briefcase. and will use it if anything is done to block his request en route to SEA, end quote. So at this point, the air traffic control notified the Seattle Police Department, and they contacted the FBI. And Cooper was kind of like adamant that the plane not land until like all the cash and the items were obtained and ready to be brought to him. So this forced the plane to like circle over Seattle for nearly 2 hours while like the FBI agents gathered the cash and the parachutes.
Can you imagine the passengers just like, there's the Space Needle. There's the Space Needle again. Hey, there it is again.
In, National Lampoon's. It's like, look, kids, Big Ben, Parliament.
Look, kids, a Space Needle. Look, kids, a Space Needle again.
Yeah, so normally the flight from Portland to Seattle is only like 30 minutes. And so, like I said, they were circling for like 2 hours. So the crew told the passengers that they had like a minor mechanical difficulty. I think they said something like they had to burn off excess fuel or something ridiculous like that.
For 2 hours and a half-hour flight.
Yeah. But anyway, so the parachutes, they ultimately got them from a local skydiving school called Seattle Sky Sports. And the cash they got from the Seattle First National Bank. And what's interesting about that is the cash came from a special fund that was reserved for emergencies. So this meant that all the bills had like been photographed and documented and their serial numbers had been logged. And that's going to come up again later as well.
I mean, that's one of those things that if you're taking a lump sum, especially if you're trying to use it as ransom, like there's no way in hell that they're ever going to let those bills leave without being documented. So like, I don't know what the end game is for a lot of this shit. I mean, nowadays you're just going to get blasted with the giant thing of blue ink, but like anybody that's trying to take these like lump sums, like even all the money, if say somebody like try to rob a bank and you try to take all the money out of the vault or take all the money out of the drawers, like everything is documented, dude. Like the second you spend one of those bills, ping, you're going to get caught. That's how a lot of people get caught with these big robberies.
Well, and even if the serial numbers and whatnot weren't documented, it's so hard to spend like large amounts of cash at this point. Like anything over a few $1,000s, it's going to be documented. It's going to be scrutinized. So, I mean, I think the days of like asking for large cash ransoms are pretty much over at this point.
I mean, you probably could get away with it. You just have to ask for it all in quarters. I think that'd be the way to go. I just need $20 million in quarters. See how long it takes them for that.
Dump truck to haul them around in.
I want you to load it into the back of the plane. We'll circle for like 4 hours. It'll all be good. You collect all them damn quarters.
I mean, that's how they could have burned off the excess fuel with all the quarters on the payload.
Hey, I'm pretty sure that was a plan at one point during one of the Trailer Park Boy movies, is that they realized that coins are unmarked. So they started going around and stealing shit out of gumball machines and fucking...
Yeah, it was like the parking meters and shit.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yep.
Yeah. No, that's most definitely a Trailer Park Boys. Yeah, it is one of the movies, I think.
I think it was one of the first movies, but it's a good sign for anybody. You know, if you're going to try to get a lump sum of money, you better try your best to get it in fucking some kind of change. Otherwise, that's probably the only option. Hiding some smart shit within a dumb movie, right?
Maybe the next episode we'll talk about the Trailer Park Boys coin stealing scheme. I mean, that seems like a good segue from DB Cooper, does it not?
Next thing you know, dude, there's going to be a bunch of people committing these crimes all over the place, and we're going to be liable for it. So that being said, we are not condoning anybody to do a massive heist and receive it all in change. We are just suggesting that it would be a good possible idea, but it is for entertainment purposes only, and we are not telling you to do that.
And if you do it, blame it on Bubbles and Julian.
Yeah, it's not our problem. We got the idea from elsewhere.
So jumping back in, at approximately 5:45 p.m., Flight 305 landed at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. And Captain Scott instructed all the passengers to remain seated while Tina Mucklow went to retrieve the parachutes and the cash from an FBI agent who was waiting on the runway. And this is where things get kind of sketchy for our boy DB. So the cash was delivered in a large canvas bag. And remember, he said he wanted it in a, quote, knapsack, whatever that means. And it consisted of 10,000 $20 bills, which, I mean, that just seems like an absurd number of bills. Like, you just don't think about, $200,000, that's a lot of money. But yeah, so 10,000 $20 bills. And this goes back to the fact that no denomination was specified when he was making his demands. So it's kind of been suggested that obviously, jumping out of the plane with all this money, it would have weighed a lot and it could have theoretically affected his jump out of the plane. But as we'll see later, there's a whole lot of other factors. I'm not sure the weight of the cash would have been like a deciding factor in this.
I'm going to throw this in here because it was a really good comment over in the chats.
Okay.
First and foremost, the first one says, dude, it's obvious to me now that D.B. Cooper was just a trial run for all of the CIA airplane hijackings of the 70s and 80s. I never actually put that one together. I mean,
we're going to get a little bit into that kind of stuff in theories and conclusions.
And then the other one says, sounds like an inside job. Did you ever investigate the pilot or the stewardess thoroughly? Maybe there's some more additional cool information there, too.
I personally didn't see anything particularly interesting about them. I'm not going to say there wasn't or there isn't information out there about them. It just seemed like the flight attendants were kind of just normal run-of-the-mill people. The captain, I didn't really find a whole lot of information about, period. But, you know, this is one of those topics, like, people devote their whole life to this. Like, this is the shallowest of dives possible on this. I mean, you could do a whole show just about DB Cooper and never run out of material
for all one event, dude. Like, that's the crazy part about it. And he also threw in something saying that he wasn't sure if like the bills were all marked and stuff like that as far as like the vault goes. Maybe not every single bill, but I do know specifically that if somebody goes to rob a bank, there is a particular spot that they grab from, which has bills that they have marked, and they also will throw the pack in there. So it's like, that's the whole thing you see in movies that, you know, they're like, not that out of that vault, the stuff out of that vault, is because I know that in every bank, they have a particular area where it is all marked bills, and that's where they keep the pack. And the intention is they put that in with the pack, and then they'll be able to track the bills. So there is some like back and forth with it, but yes, not fully a true statement, but just wanted to specify a little bit, but not to get off the rails, but
yeah. And like, I definitely saw from multiple sources that like this came from a special fund that was kind of like earmarked for strange situations like this. So there was kind of those protections in place for this money.
And I'm sure it's one of those things, too, that if they know that it's going to be something like any money used for ransom, like even if they're in a pinch, I feel like they are still going to take the time to at least mark a handful of them, hoping that they'll pop back up into circulation somewhere, too.
Which we're going to get to in a minute. So after the parachutes and money were brought on board, the passengers exited the plane and they began like refueling it. And Cooper then informed the crew of an additional set of demands. He wanted the plane to depart for Mexico City. He wanted it to fly at the lowest possible speed. He wanted it to fly at an altitude of no higher than 10,000 feet. And commercial planes typically fly around 35,000 feet. So this is, you know, significantly lower than a plane normally flies. And he wanted it to fly with its landing gear deployed. So the crew told Cooper that, you know, due to flying at such a low speed and with the additional drag caused by the landing gear, the plane didn't have enough fuel to get all the way to Mexico City, so they would have to stop and refuel again. So they kind of went over all their options, and they decided that they were going to stop and refuel at Reno Tahoe International Airport in Reno, Nevada. So at approximately 7:40 p.m., Flight 305 left Seattle, Washington for Reno, Nevada. And at this point, there were only 5 people on board. It was Captain Scott, First Officer Radizak, Flight Engineer Anderson, Flight Attendant Tina Mucklow, and D.B. Cooper himself. And this I thought was kind of interesting. The Air Force actually dispatched 2 F-106 fighter jets from McCord Air Force Base, which is located near Tacoma, Washington. And they dispatched them to kind of like follow the plane. But because they were flying at such a low altitude and the weather was really bad on the night in question, they like couldn't maintain visual contact, and they ended up like turning around and going back to the base.
This dude definitely knew what he was doing. I'm sure we'll get into it in theories and stuff like that, but like, this dude's definitely like ex-military, like something. This dude knew what he was fucking doing.
Put that one on the back burner. So anyway, a little ways into the flight, Cooper instructed the crew to like remain at the front of the plane in like the first class section. And before Mucklow went into the first class section, she asked Cooper to take the bomb with him when he jumped. And he replied that he would either disarm it or take it with him, which I think is kind of an odd detail. But
he wasn't trying to hurt nobody. He was just trying to get his money and be out of there.
He's like a friendly hijacker.
Yeah, like in all fairness, though, like
which is actually what a lot of people said. Like he was an affable guy. He wasn't like angry or mean to him or anything.
See, this is one of those situations that kind of reminds me of like the Killdozer thing, where it's like people that just get to a point where they're just like, I am fucking done with this shit. And it's not that they want to hurt anybody. They're just done with the way society's functioning and they're just looking for their out. Like the Killdozer guy, prime example. The dude made a fucking bulldozer to destroy everything. The whole reason that he did it was because he got pissed off with a bunch of shit that was happening with the town and a bunch of stuff coming back on him. And he had no intention to hurt people. Like he was literally driving this thing outside hoping everybody would exit the building before he went to crush it. It's just people push to their wits' end and they don't want to hurt people, but they just want to get their point across, you know?
So we're going to kind of talk about stuff of that same vein when we get into theories. So
I'm always jumping ahead on the theories, man. I apologize.
Our back burners are full already on this episode.
Dude, you can't be throwing stuff at me with theories and not expect that I'm just going to throw them throughout, man.
All right. So after the whole flight crew were like in the front of the plane, Cooper opened one of the front parachutes that he had. And supposedly he like took his pocket knife out and cut the nylon cords on the parachute, and he fashioned a handle for the canvas bag since, you know, the knapsack was not provided like he asked for. Now, in some versions of the story that I read, it said that he actually took the parachute itself and like cut strips out of the parachute material and like fashioned a knapsack out of that. So a couple different versions of the story. Either way, he opened one of these parachutes and basically destroyed it so he could have an apparatus to carry the money. So anyway, he strapped on one of the back parachutes, tied the money around his waist, and he opened the rear staircase of the plane. Now, this is where things get really interesting. At the time, the Boeing 727 was the only commercial airplane that was equipped with a rear staircase. So this has obviously led to speculation that Cooper was familiar with that model of airplane and specifically chose Flight 305 to hijack because he knew that it had this back staircase that he could execute this jump from. So at approximately 8 p.m., Cooper descended the rear staircase and jumped from the plane, and he jumped out somewhere over southern Washington state. So do you have anything to add?
Fuck this shit, I'm out. And before he left, the last thing he ever said was,
"No, I ain't D.B. Cooper."
You wanted to specify, just to make sure everybody knew.
Oh, I thought you were going to say he said, "Fuck this shit, I'm out."
Yeah, well, he said that too.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
He was the original writer of that song, just in case you guys didn't know.
Okay, so we learned something today.
Learned something new today, every day. That D.B. Cooper is not D.B. Cooper, and fuck the shit, he's out.
He was a man of many talents.
Man of many talents. And also, a little fun fact for you, after he disappeared, nobody knows this, the whole conspiracy, he went and he played Mr. Krabs.
Money, 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 money.
That's actually D.B. Cooper.
Okay.
Yep.
You're just full of nuggets of wisdom today.
Yep, a lot of fun nuggets of wisdom that nobody knew. Not even myself. I just came up with them. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with that bizarre stuff you crave.
But just a quick reminder, if you would like to snag some gear from this show, inquiries of our reality, or one of your favorite creatures or topics, hop on over to the Open Minds Media merch store for a wide range of designs and new drops regularly, and t-shirts for the low price of just $15.68. That's oddly specific, plus shipping.
And we're back with the high strangeness. Let's get back into it.
So at approximately 11 p.m., Flight 305 landed in Reno, and the crew was evacuated, and the FBI agents began an extensive search of the plane. They found Cooper's plane ticket, his clip-on tie, but they did not find any of the cash, the bomb, like I mentioned before, or obviously Cooper himself. And he also took the handwritten original note that he gave to the flight attendant, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, like you said, obviously this guy really thought out a lot of this stuff. This was not some crazed lunatic who jumped on an airplane,
I mean, I will even throw in, I don't even know if you want to get into like the theory aspect of it, but again, almost there's either two sides of it. Either one, this guy was really planned out, really strategic, really knew what he was doing, or on the flip side, he was really planned out, really strategic, and knew what he was doing because he was working for the CIA or some type of government group. Because obviously, as everybody knows, when it comes to a lot of this stuff where you start stripping away freedoms, it's a long game. It's not like an instant thing. So it's like you have to lay things down through time. You know, it's not like you can just instantly go from like, all right, everybody just get on the plane to, all right, we're going to check every single orifice you have. There has to be a bit of a leeway room to get to that point. So you have to have a starting point. It seems like, I don't know, man. I've heard this story a million times, and I always like pick up something a little bit different each time. And at least this time reading it, like, I don't know if it's because of the awesome comment over here from Foot Soldier or not, but I don't know. I'm really picking up the whole, like, you know, planned opposition idea.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit at the end. So anyway, they also found a partial fingerprint and a few strands of hair. And they also found 8 cigarette butts in the ashtray that he had smoked. But obviously, you know, this was like 1971. At this point,
he was nervous. He just chain smoked 8 of them at back to back, man. I mean, he had to get his nerves ready before he handed the note.
The 70s. I mean, you could smoke on airplanes, which is crazy. But
dude, up until like what, the 80s, they thought smoking was good for you. They were like, "Oh, you got asthma? Go smoke a cigarette. It'll help you."
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, I've been smoking cigarettes my whole life. You hear how great my voice is. It helps with asthma. All right, I'm done with my voices for now.
Okay. All right. So obviously at this point in time, forensic testing and whatnot wasn't anywhere near the level it is right now. So like no positive matches for the fingerprint or the DNA or anything like that were ever found. And the FBI also began like questioning the crew and various eyewitnesses that had seen Cooper throughout the day. And they began work on a series of composite sketches. And I'm sure anybody who's listening to this episode has seen these sketches. This is like the picture you always see of DB Cooper. It's like the kind of like wanted poster looking thing. There's like a couple of them. Yeah, there you go. There's the one where he's got the sunglasses on. There's the one where he... Yeah, there you go, where he doesn't have the sunglasses. But there was like a whole series of these that they commissioned to get to like the ultimate, you know, best version, which I believe is the one you have pulled up now. You see the one there in the middle of the screen? Yeah, that one that you've got the cursor. That was the first image. And they say this one was not accurate. If you look at it compared to like the picture directly above it, the face is much skinnier. It's longer. It's just kind of a weird looking dude in this picture. And the one that they say is most accurate, you know, he just looks like a normal guy, like nothing particularly remarkable about him, in my opinion.
Which is definitely the way to go if you're going to try to do something like this. I mean, you want to blend in with the crowd. You don't want to have any distinguishing marks, nothing like that. If you just look like a generic businessman traveling on a plane back in the 70s, dude, like, good fucking luck trying to find this guy. Not to mention the most generic 70s haircut possible, you know, completely shaven face. I mean, you either had a completely shaven face or a full beard. Like, he picked the most generic, like, businessman 70s look.
Well, I don't know if it was so much that he picked that. I mean, like, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, everybody basically wore, like, the same clothes and had the same haircut. You know, there wasn't as much individuality, I guess I'll say, as there is nowadays.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I still feel like people still try to, like, add their flair and stuff like that. But, yeah, he tried to, I mean, just generic black suit. Because, I mean, even back in the day, I mean, people kind of had, like, their colors. You know, they wear, like, browns or they wear this or they wear that. He just generic is the most generic possible outfit. Like, I think he purposely chose this outfit.
Absolutely.
Strategically.
So, kind of jumping back in, after analyzing the flight data, the FBI initially theorized that Cooper most likely landed near Lake Merwin in Ariel, Washington.
Corner of bumfucking, you got a pretty mouth.
Exactly. So the FBI and like the local police began like searching the area, and they even used the FBI's underwater evidence collection team to search the lake, but spoiler alert, no evidence was found. However, years later, they reanalyzed the flight data, and the FBI determined that their initial proposed landing zone was like wildly inaccurate. And Cooper had most likely landed somewhere over the, I believe it would be pronounced Washougal River, Washougal. I'm going to say Washougal.
That'd be my best guess too, Washougal.
So anyway, at this point, they searched the area around this river, but again, no evidence was found. But what's kind of funny or ironic, I guess, is at this point, the Mount St. Helens volcano had erupted, and they said if there was like any physical evidence, it probably would have been destroyed by the volcano eruption, which is just like a crazy turn of events in all this.
You said it was which mountain eruption?
Mount St. Helens.
Okay, so it was fucking Bat Squatch. Bat Squatch is DB Cooper. All those sightings of that thing in the air that people couldn't get, that was DB Cooper. He was coming out of the sky. The whole Bat Squatch phenomenon and DB Cooper are the same thing. He is a human cryptid. We've confirmed it.
He landed right in the volcano?
We've confirmed it. DB Cooper and Bat Squatch, same fucking guy. It's the same fucking guy.
Confirmed.
Confirmed.
You know, in all the theories I came across, I didn't see that one.
Hey, man, I mean, in all fairness, though, talking from like a logical standpoint, all the weird photos of the Bat Squatch are like this thing just kind of zipping by in the sky, right? So if this was at essentially almost that same moment, like what if something happened with the parachute and those weird shots of Bat Squatch were actually like DB Cooper barreling down from the sky about to just get embedded 20 feet into the fucking ground?
That's good. Somebody should look into that.
I mean, there might be something there. Just saying.
All right. So at the time of the hijacking, the FBI did like a nationwide search, and they found out that like no missing persons reports for a man that matched DB Cooper's description were filed in like the weeks before or after the hijacking.
Because he was one of theirs.
Well, yeah. So obviously this wasn't a guy that like his family was missing him, you know? And, you know, this also obviously received like widespread media attention. And in the midst of all this kind of media frenzy, there was a reporter for the Oregon Journal, and his name was James Long. And he incorrectly referred to the hijacker as DB Cooper rather than Dan Cooper, which was the name he gave when he was buying his ticket.
Which is clearly a fake name. Because why the hell would you give your real name? Especially if you don't take the note. You do all these precise things. Why the fuck would you use your real name? It was definitely an alias.
We're going to get into that too in just a second. But anyway, this guy's report was like republished by several other media outlets, and the incorrect name just kind of stuck, and it's become, you know, a really integral part of this whole case. And it almost makes me wonder, you know, DB Cooper, that's just fun to say. It sounds mysterious. It sounds cool. Like, how much of the notoriety for this case is based off of that one simple mistake? I mean, just Dan Cooper, that just doesn't have the same aura of like mystery and, you know, suave 1960s espionage around it. You know what I'm saying?
Dan Cooper just sounds like somebody you'd have a beer at your local bar. It doesn't sound like any... Which, again, maybe that's his plan in the first place. Because, again, you're not trying to draw attention to yourself. You're wearing this, like, generic suit. It would make sense. You'd pick just a generic-sounding name, like Dan Cooper. Like, it doesn't stick out. It's like just bland.
It's not... It's generic, but it's not like he chose John Smith. You know, it's not like that's so generic that it sounds fake, but it's like generic enough that it's not memorable.
Exactly. Like I said, it's intricate thinking, man. Like, this guy knew what he was doing, and whatever the backstory is, whether he was doing it for himself or he was doing it for somebody else, like this guy 150% full well came onto this plane knowing every single facet of this plan that he was going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree with you, and we're going to get into more of this stuff here in just a second.
I will say, though, it always is nice, though, to hear about somebody that does some type of robbery, and they don't do it stupidly. Like, I am entertained by hearing people that pull things off with every single intricate detail, because I don't know about you, dude, but you'll hear about these stories of bank robbers, and you're just like, well, if you would have done it smarter, maybe you wouldn't have gotten caught. So it's always nice to hear about, like, once in a great blue moon, you get this person that actually, like, did it correctly, and you're just like, damn, that's like a Robin Hood right there.
Well, I mean, the first and the middle part were amazing, but I mean, he might could have done a little better on the back end, but we'll get to that in just a second.
Or did he pull it off exactly how he was supposed to? Because
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why in just a second. Hold that thought. We'll be back in a flash.
But if you guys don't like hearing the ads, then I have a solution for you. You can get ad-free and early access to this show and Inquiries of All Reality on the Open Minds Media Patreon for just $1 a month. That's less than a bag of chips, and it's a great way to support the show and all the hard work behind it. And if you're interested in merch store discounts or premium video versions of episodes, then there are a few other tiers with additional benefits and 7-day free trials available.
And now back to the show. So on February 10th of 1980, so like almost 9 years after the hijacking, there was a couple named Harold and Patricia Ingram, and they took their 8-year-old son Brian on a camping trip, and they were camping on the banks of the Columbia River near Vancouver, Washington. And this is noteworthy because the Washougal River is a tributary of the Columbia River. And while collecting firewood, the little boy, Brian, he discovered 3 stacks of $20 bills. It totaled like $5,800. And they were buried like just below the surface of the sand. And by buried, I don't mean like somebody had dug a hole and obviously like placed these and covered it up. It was like they had just washed ashore by, the tide and then been covered up by the sand. But anyway, the Ingrams notified the FBI, and they confirmed that the serial numbers on the bills matched those of the D.B. Cooper ransom money. And the following day, the FBI dug up the entire area where Brian discovered this cash. But again, spoiler alert, no further evidence was found. But this did kind of renew public interest in the case and led to a lot of new theories being proposed.
So, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't according to plan, because again, if this guy was strategically thought out, I mean, wouldn't it not be a good idea to drop some random bills in a certain area? Because then everybody's focused over here. You can disappear over there. If you leave a substantial amount, not just like $20, but you leave like $5,000, because clearly $5,000 out of 200,000 isn't shit. It's a substantial enough amount that people are like, all right, there might be something in this area. So that could be part of the plan to draw attention to this area while he's getting the fuck out of Dodge, because they're like, all right, he's got to be in this area if there's $5,000, because that's, not something that somebody would normally leave. Like that's a well thought out plan. If he actually, I feel like there's a possibility that he did that on purpose, because why would you not leave fake clues somewhere so that you can escape somewhere else and keep people's focus over here?
No, I definitely think that's a good point. So this I didn't put in the notes, but I'm glad you brought this up because it reminded me of it, and I think it's appropriate to talk about it here. So some things about this case just seem like it wasn't only about the money for him. One of the flight attendants said that while they were waiting for the passengers to come off the plane and it was being refueled and that whole process, she was just kind of like trying to break the tension with Cooper. And she joked with him like, hey, can I have some of that money? And he like handed her one of the stacks of bills. He was like, yeah, here you go. So, I mean, if you were just trying to get all the money you could out of this, that seems like an odd thing to do. So, it kind of gets back to what was really this guy's motivation.
Even on the flip side, I mean, all right, so say you have somebody that you care about a lot and they need some type of procedure or something like that, right? Your goal is I need this much money, but you take into consideration, if I'm jumping out of a plane, if I'm doing this, if I'm doing that, I'm going to be losing some of it. So if he says, all right, I need 100,000, but I'm going to ask for 200,000, then anything else above that 100,000 is just who fucking cares? Like this was the intended amount, but it would make sense to do that too strategically, because again, if they're like, all right, this guy was specifically wanted to take this much money, they're going to start looking in the area for like a surgery that costs this much money, this that costs this much money. They're going to look for that set amount of money. So if you throw them off with it and say, I need 200,000, but you need 100,000, they're going to be looking for the 200. They're not going to notice the 100,000 somewhere else. So again, could be part of that plan too.
Yeah, like we said at the beginning, this is the equivalent of like $1.6 million in today's money. So if he was, trying to do all this to get money for a specific purpose, that's a lot of fucking money. Like there's nothing that you couldn't do with that. So like you said, if it was, his wife needed a surgery or something like that, he could have lost half the money and they still would have had theoretically more than enough for whatever they quote unquote needed it for.
Which would also, if that is a possibility, explain why nobody marked him as a missing person. Because if his wife knew that he was going to do something like this, why would you put a flag? You just keep your fucking mouth shut if the guy never shows back up, or you get the surgery if he does show back up. So, I mean...
And hope he comes stumbling home with a knapsack full of cash.
Yeah, I mean, if he had a purpose behind it, it would make sense that the family wouldn't... If the family knew about it or knew whatever the purpose was for this money... Again, why would you report it? That's putting a bullseye even right on your head where you're going to get interrogated now and why you know that information.
And I think that is a perfect segue into theories.
Ooh, baby.
All right. So kind of like we said, you could do an entire fucking podcast, entire season of television, an entire whatever, just about theories about this case.
We should make a TV show about that where we spend 20 seasons only finding like a dollar bill, you know, like a few other shows out there trying to find treasures. So it's going to
be Finding Bigfoot, but the DB Cooper version of that?
It's going to be the Curse of Oak Island, but DB Cooper version.
No, either way.
We've been out here for 10 years and we found $1 bills. So that means that this must be the location. So we're going to stay here and we're going to keep looking.
Definitely. So, like I said, I mean, we could go for hours about theories and, you know, the different people that the FBI proposed could be DB Cooper. I mean, at the last number I saw, the FBI had proposed over 1,000 suspects throughout the years. So I just picked like 3 suspects / theories that I thought were kind of fun and interesting. So one of the most funny, compelling, interesting ones I ran across was a man named Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. And on April 7th of 1972, so, you know, just a few months after the DB Cooper hijacking, McCoy boarded a United Airlines flight. It was flight number 855, and he boarded it in Denver, Colorado. Interestingly, this was also a Boeing 727. And after takeoff, McCoy hijacked the plane using, quote, an unloaded handgun and a fake grenade, which was actually a paperweight.
Sounds like a copycat.
That's what I think too, but we're going to get there. So this is kind of interesting. McCoy demanded 4 parachutes, so same as Cooper, but $500,000.
That's where he fucked up.
A shitload of money. So the plane landed in San Francisco and the parachutes and cash were delivered to McCoy. So all this, you know, very, very similar, basically the exact same thing as the DB Cooper case up to this point. So the plane took off, and while they were flying over Provo, Utah, McCoy lowered the lower staircase and jumped out of the plane.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
He was for 2 days until he was apprehended. And then he was taken to trial and sentenced to 45 years in prison. And he was serving his term at a prison in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. However, and this is where things get batshit crazy. In 1974, he escaped prison by, quote, crashing a garbage truck through the penitentiary's main gate.
How did an inmate get in a garbage truck? Serious question.
I don't know. I guess he was on garbage duty.
How?
That's only the first part of the craziness, though.
Oh, my God. This guy's known for hijacking. Let him be around the truck.
So 3 months later, they found this guy in Virginia Beach, and he was then killed in a shootout with the FBI. Like, how do we not have a movie about this guy? Like, everybody knows about DB Cooper, but nobody knows about this fucking thing, which is like the craziest story I've ever heard.
Again, another FBI connection to this stuff. I mean, I don't know, man. I definitely am seeing the possibility that, you know, you got to take into consideration the conspiracy to try to, you know, strip away freedoms on an airplane. Because, I mean, of course, like, this happens once, whether it actually happened from a person or it happened from whatever. But at that point, now you have the ability to be able to track everybody wherever they're going.
Let's pump the brakes on that. We're going to get there. All right. So
I prematurely theorized. My apologies.
Put it back in your pants, Shane. So despite all these like obvious similarities, the FBI ultimately like dismissed McCoy as a suspect in the DB Cooper hijacking. And this was mostly due to the fact that McCoy was only 28 years old at the time, and everybody said DB Cooper appeared to be like in his mid 40s. And this guy also had an alibi for Thanksgiving Day, which again was like the day after the DB Cooper hijacking. So unless this guy was like really getting after it and got back to Utah for family Thanksgiving dinner, obviously it wasn't the same guy. So like you said, this definitely just seems like a copycat to me.
I mean, you see somebody get away with that shit. Of course, if you see somebody get away and disappear off a plane with $200,000, dude, you have to expect that there is going to be at least one person that thinks that they could probably pull off the same thing.
Well, and he basically did, you know, I mean, if he hadn't have jumped like out in the middle of a fucking desert, pretty much, I mean, he might have got away with it because he obviously survived the jump.
Yeah, you got to escape into some trees, man. Did they have I'm assuming they probably did back in the 70s. They could have just flew a fucking helicopter over the
yeah,
woods.
they did all that kind of stuff. Like they
ran thermo,
searched
right?
with helicopters and they never saw any trace of anything.
Were they was thermo technology like used back then on like planes and stuff or like helicopters? Like,
I feel like maybe like very rudimentary versions of it. Cause, do you remember when we were doing like our national parks episode and we were talking about, the Dennis Martin disappearance?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they used some sort of very primitive thermal imaging to try to search for him. And that was, you know, around this same time period. So I think there's like some version of that, but I mean, I don't know the extent.
So from what I'm reading on this article, it says by the mid 1980s and 1990s, many search and rescue units had integrated thermo technology, but it wasn't in regular use on helicopters until about the 80s. So this was just before they were putting thermo in planes. So I'm gonna guess that it's not like they had some type of advanced military technology they were using on this shit. So they probably had no thermo. So if thermo was a thing, dude, DB Cooper, there's probably a good possibility they would have caught his ass.
Or not.
If they weren't even supposed to catch him in the first place. Maybe they did catch him. Maybe they did catch him and they were like, all right, we got to move you to the next location now because this is kind of hot over here.
He's like underground at Area 51 or something.
Yeah, he's just hanging out with the Grays and, you know, Bob Lazar and all that shit. And they're like, what'd you do to get here? He's like, I'm fucking DB Cooper. No, wait, no. What he actually said was,
no, I ain't DB Cooper.
Like, nobody asked you, bro. Like, nobody even brought up the context. And that's what he says. He just walks around saying that, man.
That definitely means that he is. All right, guys, we got to take another break. We'll be right back. And now we're getting back to the bizarre. All right, so there's this other guy, and his name is William Smith. And this guy served in the U.S. Navy, and he was on a combat air crew. And after he was discharged, he got a job with the Lehigh Valley Railroad. But he ended up losing his job and his pension due to the bankruptcy of the Penn Central Transportation Company, which was like the conglomerate that owned the railroad. And it's been said that, you know, after losing his pension and his job, Smith could have, quote, created a grudge against the corporate establishment and transportation field. I've never heard of somebody having a specific grudge against the transportation field. But anyway, that's what's been suggested. Quote, as well as a sudden need for money. So this is kind of going back to what you were talking about earlier in the episode.
I mean, I want to read this guy's manifest because, I mean, look at like the Unabomber, for example. This dude just had it out for anybody in tech. Like, people just get fixated on something and then they just will start building up just hatred for this one specific thing. So, I mean, as ridiculous as it sounds, man, like, who knows how everybody's brain works? Like, this guy could have built this shit up and just blew up over this fucking train thing because he just hyper fixated on like one certain thing that pissed him off.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you work your whole life thinking that, you know, you're going to be able to retire and get this cushy pension from serving your country and working on the railroad, and then, you know, all that's gone in the blink of an eye. I mean, I can see how that would drive somebody to do some questionable things.
Yeah, like we were mentioning earlier with the Killdozer thing, man. That's something we got to hit at some point just because, yeah, I know it's not typically like a cryptid story or anything, but it's definitely like an interesting story, you know? Like, I don't know if you've ever dived into that, dude, but it's fascinating.
Not really.
You've seen the videos and stuff of that, though, right?
I mean, I like vaguely know about it, but no details. So
dude,
if that's something you want to do in the future, you could teach me about it.
This dude spent like a year of his time just like hiding in his garage, like getting pieces of like metal and all this shit, and just made this fucking tank out of a fucking bulldozer. And it got to the point, and I'm not going to ruin the full story, get into all the full details, but like the cops couldn't get him out of it. They basically just had to sit and wait until he ran out and decided to come out on his own. Like he built that thing up, dude.
It sounds like the kind of like parade float tank thing at the end of Animal House.
That's what we're going to have to bring in next year to the Nine Rouge parade. We're going to have to bring in a giant killdozer. Not actually use it, but, you know, just the principle of the idea. And side note,
and Kid
also,
Rock could be riding on the top of it?
Yes, Kid Rock on a killdozer with the Nine Rouge.
He'd be 99999 Festival Queen.
Update on that, by the way. I did look into it, and unfortunately, it happened back in March. So I'm going to have to wait till next year, and then I'll give you guys an update on the March de la Nine Rouge.
Oh, only 10 months to go.
Yeah, you guys got to wait a year. I'm sorry. I'll give you guys full live details of everything going on, and I'll give you guys a full report on every 5 minutes on whether or not I have found the Nine Rouge or not. So it'll be fun. You guys got to wait 10 months.
Eagerly anticipating. So it's also been suggested that this guy, William Smith, his aviation experience could have allowed him to like actually survive the jump, and that, quote, his railroad experience would have helped him find railroad tracks and hop on a train to escape the area after the landing. That seems like a little bit of a stretch to me, but I just threw it in there because it was in some of the research I did. Furthermore, Smith would have been 43 years old at the time of the D.B. Cooper hijacking, so he fits the general age range, and he also bears like a striking resemblance to the composite photos. So Shane, if you just want to Google like William Smith D.B. Cooper, it'll pop up. It's definitely worth looking up because I looked at a lot of these different suspects, and due to this guy's story and the picture, I thought this was probably one of the most compelling ones.
Well, here you go. And I definitely agree with you on that one. They got the same
like
fucking haircut.
There, where he's wearing the sweater. Like, it's a striking resemblance.
I mean, in all fairness, though, the guy, I feel like if this is DB Cooper, I mean, it kind of can go either way. If you were DB Cooper, you definitely have to change up the haircut and change up your look. But on the other side, maybe they would expect that you would do that. So the best course of action is to not change anything at all.
And all you got to do is say, I'm not DB Cooper.
Yeah, all you got to keep...
No, I ain't DB Cooper.
He just walks around saying that. Everybody thinks he's a crazy old man. He doesn't say any phrase besides that. That is it. That's all he says.
But he doesn't look like a crazy old man at all. He's wearing like a moose sweater and sitting on a very nice deck here. Like, this guy looks like he's living the dream.
How did you get that nice deck? How are you living the dream? Could it be $20,000 U.S. currency? Possibly.
That looks like a pretty nice moose sweater.
Yeah, $195,000. You got to remember that $5,000 was found. So $195,000 sweater right there.
He still had over $1 million. But anyway, so this is also really interesting. Somebody like found this guy's high school yearbook, and allegedly one of his high school classmates was a student named Ira Daniel Cooper. And so obviously people have suggested that this could have been where he found the name. So I didn't find anything like super specific about that. It was just something that people have kind of reported on.
I don't think I have any of the yearbook pictures, but I was trying my best.
Let's see, 1955. He was probably older than that if he was like 40 in the
I think
70s.
This is just giving me random yearbook pictures. I don't think any of them are actually DB Cooper stuff. This is a cool picture,
There's
though.
probably a lot of William Smith, DB Cooper yearbook stuff floating around Google. But anyway, so moving on to the last kind of theory that we're going to talk about today. This was suggested by an FBI agent named Larry Carr, and he theorized that Cooper could have been of French-Canadian descent. And this is due to the fact that when he was making his list of demands, he specifically asked for negotiable American currency, which I said would come back up. And he kind of suggested that this is a really odd phrasing for somebody who was an American and English was their native language. And then he went on to say that Dan Cooper was the name of a French comic book character who just so happened to be a fighter pilot in the Royal Canadian Air Force. And at the time of the hijacking, the comic had been like anthologized in a French magazine called Tintin, but at that point in time, it had not been translated into English. So he said because of these strange connections and Cooper's obvious familiarity with the Boeing 727, he theorized that Cooper had previously served in the Air Force of some country and that he was stationed in Europe. Kind of a caveat to that, though, is the flight attendants Florence Schaffner and Tina Mucklow stated that Cooper had like no discernible accent, and they assumed he was just like from the Midwest.
Or was he an agent that could do multiple accents? Because I mean, even on the flip side, man, if you were military special program, like it doesn't seem like out of question that you'd be able to possibly hide your accent, because that would be like a top thing that you'd have to do, is be able to hide your accent, who you are, if you're working any type of special program, special project, anything like that. I mean, and especially if you're getting picked to possibly do some hijacking shit like this, bro. This is like a James Bond type, bro. He can do a million different types of voices.
Yeah, I mean, he was DB Cooper, International Man of Mystery.
Dude, like fucking if all of these English actors can do American accents and people are like, oh, that's not your real voice, to like their English accent, like why does it seem so out of question that somebody that is this intelligent would be able to hide their accent? I mean, that doesn't seem out of question for me. I mean, it definitely seems like a possibility,
Which is a good segue again into miscellaneous and conclusions.
I'm assuming this is a break.
Yep. All right, so kind of wrapping up, the hijacking of Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 remains, quote, the only documented unsolved case of air piracy in the history of commercial aviation, which is pretty wild when you think about it. I mean, we've had commercial airplanes for 80 years or whatever at this point, and this is the only one that they haven't solved. That's pretty crazy to me.
What's the I don't know if you looked into it, but like what's the track record of like hijackings previous to this? Like was there hijackings previous to this? Were they frequent? Like
yes. So I didn't put this in the notes because it was kind of superfluous, but something I came across was, at this time, like in the 60s and 70s, there was a rash of hijackings. And this was when the Cuban Missile Crisis and all that in Cuba and the United States were kind of at odds with each other. So these people, either for monetary gain or to, escape the government or whatever, would hijack planes and force them to fly to Cuba, because once they got to Cuba, they could not be extradited back to the United States. So hijackings were rampant in like the mid to late 60s, early 70s.
See, I think that plays in a crucial component to this, because then it's like, why would they stage hijacking so that you'd have to give more information, you have to see the ID, you have to see all of this stuff. That makes sense then that they might stage a hijacking after that so that they can start trying to make a tighter grip on all this stuff. So like just hearing that, I think it's a key component, because it plays into like the possibility of why this even happened in the first place. And why also he was the only one ever caught is because he was the ploy to get the ball rolling.
So I'm going to just put a pin in that for just a second.
I should just get that as a button for you.
So on July 8th of 2016, the FBI closed the active investigation of the DB Cooper hijacking. So that was like 45 years after it happened. And like you said, the hijacking and like all the ensuing media hoopla led to several notable changes to airport security and the aviation industry as a whole. Prior to the hijacking, official identification was not required for a domestic flight, which is just wild to think about.
Which also throws into why he would throw a name like Dan Cooper, just to be like, look how easy it is to give a fucking fake name.
There was also no baggage checks or no metal detectors at that time. But following the hijacking, the Federal Aviation Administration mandated that all carry-on bags were supposed to be searched and all passengers were supposed to go through like metal detectors prior to boarding a plane. So after this, hijackings plummeted. If you couldn't, sneak bombs and guns and shit on airplanes, you don't have anything to really hijack it with. Like people tried it after this, but they got apprehended by the flight crew and passengers and things of that nature. So this is basically the end until another thing that happened that we're going to talk about in just a second. This is basically the end of commercial hijackings being like this rampant thing.
Oh wait, you can make a bomb out of mouthwash? Well, now you're not allowed to have more than an ounce of mouthwash on a plane also. We'll just throw that one to the list too.
So this is kind of funny. One of the other changes that this incited was after this, all Boeing 727s were retrofitted with a device that kept the rear staircase from being deployed during flight. And they nicknamed this thing the Cooper vein, which I think is kind of funny.
They should have called it the anti-Cooper.
So the FBI speculates that Cooper did not survive the jump. And, Occam's razor, that's probably like the most likely outcome. And the reason for this is, obviously it's very possible that he just died either during the jump or the landing or shortly thereafter due to injuries that he has sustained or just to the elements. Because as we kind of talked about earlier, the weather conditions that night were like extremely rough. It was like 20 degrees outside with a wind chill of only 8 degrees. The plane was traveling at like 200 miles an hour when Cooper jumped. And as we said, he was only wearing a thin business suit. Furthermore,
that we know of, he could have had some kind of suit on underneath it.
He could have. And he could have had something. And
Thermal.
why I mentioned that is a strange detail that we probably just glossed over. You probably didn't even notice at the very beginning. When he got on the plane, he had his briefcase, which had the bomb in it, and he had a brown paper bag with him. And nobody ever saw what was in the brown paper bag. So people have suggested that he had like goggles and gloves and things to help him with the jump in this brown paper bag. But like I said, nobody knows what was actually in there.
I mean, I will say at least about the weather conditions and stuff, though, that all right, you're ex-military. You're used to doing these jumps from these planes. I mean, rainy weather, cold weather, that's nothing compared to a war zone, dude. Like, if you're used to dropping into a place where there's gunfire, there's people trying to shoot you out of the sky, there's planes fucking flying by, when you hit the ground, there's people shooting you from the ground. Like, I think these are great conditions versus jumping in military conditions. So, I mean, like, it's definitely possible that the guy died. I'm not going to deny the fact that it's definitely a possibility. But on the flip side, if this guy does have military background, you have to consider that his jumping abilities are going to be significantly higher than others. And the places that he would have been used to jumping if he was ex-military would be a lot more dangerous than just a cold weather condition.
I agree with that in theory. The thing I'll point out is basically when this guy jumped, he had very little idea. Like, he had a general idea, but he didn't really know where he was jumping out over.
I can tell you where he was.
Corner of bumfucking, you got a pretty mouth.
Exactly. So, like, this guy was in the middle of nowhere. Basically, he had no way of knowing where he was jumping. So, even if he did survive the jump, getting to some sort of civilization, or even if he had like an extraction point lined up, that would have been a whole nother fiasco that this guy had to do. And, say it takes him a day to get out of whatever wilderness he jumped in. If he survived, this is going to be all over the news. If he survived it and got to some sort of civilization, somebody will, oh, here's this guy coming out of the fucking woods with a parachute and a bag of cash. That's obviously that guy from the news last night. So just a strange detail, I think. I'm kind of devil's advocating myself here, but there's just a lot of weird things about this case. One of which is people have pointed out that he chose to wear the back parachute while he destroyed one of the front parachutes. And this back parachute was a military model, and it was intended only for emergency situations. And this particular parachute did not have the ability to be steered. And they said that, one of the front parachutes was this more like recreational skydiving type model, and it would have been much better suited to this situation. So this has led some people to speculate that while, he seemed really familiar with the airplane, he might not have been a super experienced skydiver.
What if he didn't intend to make it through this? What if this was like his last run and he was trying to have somebody else grab the bag? So the intention was never that he made it down, but rather that the money made it down safe. Like, even on the flip side, what if, like, I talked about earlier about, like, what if there was something wrong with his wife or whatever? What if there was something wrong with him and he was just trying to set up his family because he knew he wasn't going to be around anymore. Like, he did not intend to make it through this, but he wanted to leave his family something, so they came back and got it. Or
I definitely think things of that nature are a possibility. Conversely, none of the money other than like the $5,800 that was found by Brian Ingram in 1980 was ever found. None of it was ever reported as being spent. So, I mean, that leads me to believe that for whatever reason, whether he died or this was all a massive psyop, the money never got spent.
Or if he went to another country, would that country have reported that money? Like, theoretically, you go into the idea that he may have been from Canada. If you would have went into Canada and just converted money in small portions at a time, would like, it's a different government system. Would they have been like tracking that money like that? Or would they have just converted it to Canadian bills and called it a day?
And, you know, this is the Pacific Northwest. It's pretty close to Canada.
I mean, where exactly did he drop that? Did he drop in one of those states where it like borders Canada, where he could have even taken it off?
It was Washington State.
Yeah, so he could have even taken off into Canada. And the reason why he was never found and the money was never found is because it ended up in Canada.
I mean, that's definitely a possibility and leads into something we've basically been talking about the whole show, but was going to be kind of my stinger at the end here. Stay tuned, guys. This is our last break.
But if you guys enjoyed this show and think we deserve it, please leave a review or rating for the show on iTunes or Spotify or any other podcatcher you use. Your continued support is what makes this show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help the show grow and improve. So thank you guys. Now feel free to skip past these ads so we can get back to the show.
And now we're getting back to the bizarre. Is it possible that he was actually some sort of government operative, like a Lee Harvey Oswald type situation? And I almost wonder, you know, is this an MK Ultra thing? Because, you know, like all those guys that they talk about doing these assassinations and all this like covert government false flag type shit, a lot of them have like MK Ultra ties. So I'm curious if we, you know, obviously we don't know who the fuck this guy was, but if we ever find out who he is, it wouldn't surprise me if it turned out he had some sort of ties to MK Ultra.
I mean, I can tell you who he isn't.
No, I ain't D.B. Cooper.
That's what he's been saying.
And we've also kind of touched on this, but the theory I like a lot is that he was some sort of government operative. And this kind of gets to 9/11 conspiracy theories. I'm doing finger quotes here about like Patriot Act type shit and like the government causing the problem so they can implement the solution, which is basically kind of what you've been.
I won't even put that in air quotations, bro. Like that's like it's gotten to this weird point too, where it's just like, it's almost like that Yuri Bezmenov thing that it doesn't matter. Like if you controlled the programming for so long, if you start slapping people with facts, they aren't going to believe it anyways. So it's like you spent years just bombarding this whole idea about like 9/11. And then even if you start releasing truth, which there's been a lot of weird stuff released, like, again, the beams and, you know, I can just run through the fucking list. It could be a 10-hour episode, but we've gotten to a point now where I feel like people have become so desensitized to 9/11 that as little pieces of information get released, people aren't even going to, like, the conspiracy theorists are going to look at it and they're going to, you know, be like, all right, this is exactly what this is. But the people that they're trying to convince that this was all a conspiracy, like, they're never going to believe it anyways. Like, so it's, you know, it's irrelevant. Like, we're going to get to a point where they're going to completely, like, release these documents eventually, maybe, you know, after 70 years, whatever the fuck. And it's like, people still aren't going to believe it even then, you know? Like, it's going to be one of those things, dude.
No, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I'm obsessed with, like, 9/11 conspiracy theory, so I don't want to derail us.
Yeah, no, I don't want to open up that can of worms, but there's just, like, fucking Osama bin Laden being trained by the fucking U.S. government, like... There's just so many weird, like, undeniable pieces. Like, oh, the fucking guys that supposedly hijacked the plane, their passports were found a couple streets over with not even a singe, a burn mark, scratch, nothing on them. Like, there's just too many weird pieces. And again, I don't open up this whole can of worms, but I'll start ranting about this shit for like an hour, dude.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to tangent us further. But
that was like my first big conspiracy, in all fairness. So it's like, you know, that one you always hold really true to your heart and you'll sit there and argue with people about it forever.
The one that got away?
Yeah, like that's mine. That's like my main one that got me into like, all right, the government's lying to us. Because I remember in 2001, dude, I don't know why I wasn't at school, but I was at the mall with my mom's boyfriend at the time, and all the TVs turned on at the mall, dude. And I remember watching that shit on TV. And as I got older, I'm like, all right, that was weird. Started diving into it, dude, and it just all spiraled from there, and here I am now.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, okay, kind of wrapping things up. I mean, we've talked about a lot of this throughout the episode. But yeah, I think, Occam's razor is this guy just died. I think my favorite kind of theory is the, MK Ultra government operative, implementing the problem to give you the solution. That's my favorite theory. Sounds like it's your favorite one as well. And then, like we said, there's always the possibility that, this guy just wanted to kind of unalive himself in style for whatever reason.
I like the Robin Hood theory a little bit. It's always nice to kind of have those like folk heroes every once in a while that the government's after, but everybody sees them as like, I'm glad that guy got away, just because he didn't hurt anybody,
Something kind of interesting that I'll just throw in here, in light of all the recent controversy and whatnot with Boeing, there is a theory that whoever DB Cooper was a Boeing employee. And this goes back to, his familiarity with the model of airplane. And also when they were analyzing the necktie that he left on the plane, they found, quote, minute particles of alloyed aluminum on the tie. And supposedly at the time, like very few industries used this particular type of alloyed titanium, and one of them was Boeing factory. So people have suggested that this could mean that he worked for Boeing, which opens up a whole new can of worms. But anyway, so rounding everything out, like you said, in the years since this, DB Cooper has become just this massive cult icon, especially in the Pacific Northwest. Been, countless books, movies, television shows, podcasts, you name it, you can find DB Cooper stuff about it. Like we talked about, the first place I learned about this was the 2004 movie Without a Paddle, which I think you have some sound bites from.
Yes, I grabbed a couple of them, actually. I particularly had to get those ones, because where else are you going to find somebody saying DB Cooper, Like, and in all fairness, dude, that is one of those forgotten favorite movies, though, because it is a solid, funny-ass comedy that is one of those ones that just kind of got lost in time unless you know what it is. But the sequel's fucking garbage. But the first one, great movie.
Yeah, so if all you listeners out there, haven't watched that movie, go check it out. It's a good movie on its own merit, and the whole DB Cooper part's really fucking cool.
Where else do you get guys adventuring through the woods looking for treasure while also having run-ins with hairy hot hippie chicks and some crazy butt fucking weed growing hillbillies? It's great.
Yeah, it's a great family film.
And maybe even DB Cooper at the end, or as he says,
no, I ain't DB Cooper.
All right. And so every November in Seattle, Washington, there's, quote, a multi-day gathering of Cooper researchers and enthusiasts. It's called CooperCon, which I think is hilarious. And the convention was founded by a researcher named Eric Eulis. And this event's kind of a successor for a previous event called DB Cooper Days. And that event ended, quote, when the owner of the Ariel Store pub died and the pub was forced to close, which that's kind of a downer note to end on. But I'm glad that this guy has started this new convention. I mean, you know how much we love going to cryptid conventions. If Seattle wasn't on the other side of the country, I would love to go to this Cooper convention because I'm just eat up with this shit. But anyway, that's all I've got for this one. Not a cryptid, not an alien, but like you said, a human cryptid. So this was a fun one to do. This is a subject
still falls into conspiracies, and we definitely cover a lot of conspiracies as of recent. So
yeah, and it's a subject I've loved since 2004 when that movie came out. So is there anything that you'd like to add before we kind of close everything out?
You know what drives me crazy, but I enjoy it at the same time? All of these mysteries that that there's never going to be a solid conclusion to. Because it's like, even if you went out in these woods, dude, and you started searching, more than likely, like, if the body was around, it'd be completely gone at this point. If there was any bills around, probably completely one with nature at this point.
Even if they didn't get wiped away by the volcano?
Yeah, even if they didn't maybe even get wiped away by the volcano, or even fucking Bat Squatch, to throw that one back in here. But it's like, I enjoy some of these mysteries that you can theorize about, but at the end of the day, it drives me crazy in the back of my mind that even if you have it right, you'll never know for sure. Like, it's kind of like the Kentucky meat shower. That's one of those ones that is so fucking fascinating, but it's gotten so far away now that there's no way to be able to actually go back and like check the area, check this thing. It's like, it's going to be one of those things that remains a mystery forever. And that's the cool part about it. But on the flip side, as a researcher, it drives you crazy that you'll never know the solid answer. And you could literally have been saying the 100% correct answer, but you will never know for sure.
Well, like you said, I think that's kind of what makes it so romantic. Like if something came out tomorrow and we're like, oh, DB Cooper was this like pencil pusher for Boeing. Like how fun is that? Like it's much more fun him being DB Cooper, International Man of Mystery.
Dude, you know what? I will say the one thing that kind of got ruined, the whole, what's her name? The one from the Romanoff family, the daughter that disappeared, Anastasia. The whole like Anastasia mystery of like, where did she go? Where did she disappear to? And it was just a mystery forever. Well, I was reading some article that apparently back in like the early 2000s, Russia apparently had found her body inside of like the walls of like one of the castles. So they confirmed and knew where she went, and they didn't actually like release it to the general public for anybody to know until like 2019. So it's like one of those things that is just one of those fascinating mysteries. Like, where did Anastasia go? Did she take off to France? Did she end up with her grandma? Did she do this? Did she do that? And it was just always fun. And then, yeah, if we get a solid answer in 2019, it's like, oh, she didn't make it anywhere. She just died in the wall of the castle. That was that.
Well, and I think this is a good point to kind of bring everything home. It's like we talk about with aliens or cryptids or anything that we talk about on the show. A lot of this stuff, the answers aren't that important. It's the journey that's fun, and it's the research that's fun. And, I don't really care if we ever learn who DB Cooper is. I don't care if we ever know are aliens out there. I don't really care if we ever find a Bigfoot carcass. It's the journey that's fun. And that's my words of wisdom I'm going to leave you on tonight.
I will say, though, if any of those things I did want to see in front of me, it would definitely be an alien. Like, I need some validity for aliens. Like, I know it's not even one of those things that it's like, I believe. Like, I know that they exist out there because there's just no possibility in my mind that in this crazy fucking universe we live in that there isn't another form of intelligent life. Like, that's just... Like, I know they exist out there, but it's like I still want that confirmation, at least for that one, Like, I can live with the mystery of Sasquatch, all the weird little, encounters people see, the little blur, it's stepping out in front of some people, but the one dude that I need some validity for before I die, just because I know it's there, is the fucking aliens, man.
Well, hey, the government's going to tell you all about it. They're disclosing it.
Project Bluebeam shit. I don't trust anything the government says, dude. Dude, what kind of crazy world do we live in, though, that, everybody can study UFOs their entire life, and then as soon as the government starts talking about it, it's like, yeah, I don't believe shit. That's that desensitized information, dude, because the government's gotten to a point now, and I think they did this purposely with the UFO phenomenon. They could literally come out tomorrow and say, yeah, we've been working with aliens since the 80s. They've been, trickle feeding their images into movies. They've been helping us write stuff. They've been doing technology, all this shit. And everybody's gonna be like, we don't believe shit you've been saying. Like, what are you talking about? That's bullshit. Like, they've gotten to the point where we're so desensitized, they could just literally give us the truth and just sit back and laugh. Like, it's crazy to think about, dude. Even with the UFO community, dude, they could literally drop some bomb fucking information, and 90% of the UFO community is going to say it's bullshit because it came from them.
I'm in that number. Anything the government tells me, I don't believe. Aliens, DB Cooper, or otherwise.
And I don't either, which is fucking mind-bending that they're literally at that point that they could just start dropping information and we would never know it. But that's the whole thing about muddying the waters, man. You got to drop 5 pieces of bullshit and 1 piece of solid info, and then it just gets filled in with the rest of the shit.
Filled in with the rest of the shit, just like this program.
Well, now that we've reached this spot,
corner of bumfucking, you got a pretty mouth.
I will say, if you guys enjoyed today's conversation and want to show some love, smash that follow icon.
Some love?
Some love. Smash that love. Smash that follow icon and share today's episode with a friend, because grassroots support from listeners like you guys, just like PBS, is exactly how the show grows. So thank you.
But don't take my word for it. See what I did there? All right. If you guys have any free time, please show some love to our wonderful sponsors and friends of the show. We got our buddies Rick and Hans at I Know Squatch for all your squatchy gear needs. We got our buddy Dave, aka the Snarly Yow, with Snarly Yow Natural Products. He's got some awesome beard balms and body washes and things of that nature. Also puts on some kick-ass events. Check that out. We've got our buddy Joe with Cryptoteology for all your, ready for it?
I'm ready.
Wearable cryptids. And we've also got
What
Big
the
Eight
hell
threads.
is even that?
I don't know.
I don't know either. And if you guys also have some additional free time, don't forget to check out our awesome friends with affiliate links, Dimension Devices, Oregon-ite, and Sticker Mule, with additional discounts and credits available. More information on those is available down in that show description.
And if you want to contact us for any reason, Shane, tell them how they can do that.
First and foremost, you guys can email us at bizarreencounters@outlook.com, or you guys get a hold of us through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the ones that we are the most active on. Or you guys can also get a hold of us through our submission form, which is available on our link tree. And the last way you guys can contact us is through our hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you guys get a hold of us, just don't forget to get a hold of us.
And as always, all this shit is in the link tree in the show description.
And with that, just like DB Cooper did, and just like the mysteries of the world tend to be, always remain and stay mysterious and bizarre, my friends. Bizarre. Bizarre.
DB Cooper is Bat Squatch?
Corner of bum fucking, you got a pretty mouth.
No, I ain't BB Cooper.